Good evening. It's Monday, the 3rd of February 2025, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Tariff wars. US President Donald Trump slams tariffs on neighboring countries, sparking a massive response from those nations. European Union also under consideration while the EU markets takes a dip in early shares. State of emergency. Myanmar to head to polls and the military junta extends emergency regulations, sparking concerns of fair polls. And Grammys galore. Beyoncé finally gets the converted prize while Kanye, or Ye, gets an escort out of the show.
Cowboy Carter. Beyonce.
I just feel very full and very honored.
Tonight we'll have the latest from Hollywood. That and much more next on World News Tonight.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Mahesh Jani.
Good evening once again. We begin tonight in the United States, where Trump's election promises are being delivered at a record pace, putting his America First policy into action as he continues to slap tariff after tariff on Canada, Mexico, China, and the EU. Tonight, it's also sparkling a massive response from the neighboring countries, especially Canada and Mexico. Meanwhile, in the EU, early trading in European markets have drastically dropped as Trump also warned EU that he will also slap tariffs against the Union bloc. European Union leaders gathered today to discuss how to bolster the continent's defenses against Russia and how to handle US President Donald Trump after his decision to impose tariffs on goods from the EU. Antonio Costa, the president of the European Council of EU leaders, has billed the one-day gathering as a retreat devoted to defense policy rather than a formal summit, aiming for an open discussion without any official declaration or decisions. Meanwhile, many leaders are scrambling around the world to figure out how to deal with the new measures by the US president.
President Trump throwing the first punch in a fight with America's largest trading partners. Imports from Canada and Mexico will be hit with a tariff of 25%. Imports from China, 10%. The president says the tariffs are a reaction to illegal migration, illicit fentanyl, and trade deficits.
Number one is the people that have poured into our country so horribly and so much. Number two are the drugs, fentanyl, and everything else.
Government data shows over 21,000 pounds of illicit fentanyl was seized at the U.S. southern border during fiscal year 2024. But only 43 pounds of the drug was seized at the Canadian border. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said the country is at a critical moment. Nearly 30% of all imports to the U.S. come from Canada and Mexico. Experts say prepare for sticker shock on everything from Mexican tequila and avocados to Canadian-supplied car parts, energy, and lumber.
Elon Musk, who is heading US President Donald Trump's efforts to shrink the federal government, gave an update on the efforts yesterday, saying they are working to shut down the U.S. foreign aid agency, USAID. Now, the conversation, which included former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy and Republican Senator Joni Ernst and Mike Lee, began with Musk saying that they were working to shut down the United States Agency for International Development. Musk said in the conversation that the agency is beyond repair, adding that President Trump agrees it should be shut down. Yesterday, Reuters reported that the Trump administration removed 2 top security officials at USAID during the weekend after they tried to stop representatives from Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or known as DOGE, from gaining access to restricted parts of the building. The closure of the organization might impact ongoing projects in Sri Lanka as well, but however, it's unclear whether the funding for the said ongoing projects will be given to complete it, or a review of the said organization would mean that all projects' importance will be re-evaluated. The previous head of the organization under the Biden administration was Samantha Powers, who was very much involved in the last phase of Sri Lanka's civil war when she was America's UN ambassador under President Barack Obama. For more on trade wars in the Americas, Panama's president vowed to end a key development deal with China after meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and after complaints from President Donald Trump that the Latin American country had ceded control over its critical shipping canal to Beijing. Now, Jose Raul Molino, Panama's president, said that his nation's sovereignty over the 51-mile waterway which connects the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea will remain unchanged.
The Panamanian president further said he would not renew 2017 Memorandum of Understanding to join China's Belt and Road Global Development Initiative and that Panama would instead look to work more closely with the US. This was said after Molino's meeting with Rubio on his first international trip since being confirmed. During his visit, Rubio wrote in a post on X that the United States cannot and will not allow the Chinese Communist Party to continue its effective and growing control over the Panama Canal area. Trump has complained that China exerts control over the canal and charges US ships six-figure premiums to cross Panama's isthmus.
Russia's TASS news agency reported that a senior pro-Russian paramilitary from East Ukraine's Donetsk region was seriously injured in a blast at a Moscow residential building today.
According to Russian media, the bomb detonated just as a man with bodyguards entered the lobby of the Scarlet Sales complex on the banks of the Moscow River, just 12 kilometers from the Kremlin. Russian officials cited law enforcement as calling the blast an assassination. It was not immediately clear who the target had been, but the agency said among the injured were the bodyguards of the dead man. Bazaar, a Telegram channel with contacts in Russia's security forces, published a video showing major damage to the lobby of the building. In December, Ukraine took credit for the killing of Russian General Igor Krylov in a bomb blast outside a Moscow apartment building. There was no immediate comment from Ukraine.
While Myanmar's military has extended its state of emergency for another 6 months as it struggles to maintain its increasingly fragile grip on power, with fighting raging on multiple fronts across the country. Now, the military-controlled National Defense and Security Council renewed the emergency rule in a meeting in the capital, Naypyidaw, claiming that it was required for the upcoming elections.
Myanmar's ruling military has extended a state of emergency for another 6 months, state media reported on Friday. The announcement came a day ahead of the 4th anniversary of a coup, and as the country gears up to hold an election, widely seen as an effort by the ruling generals to gain legitimacy. Myanmar has been locked in a civil war triggered by a military takeover in 2021, which overthrew the elected civilian government of Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi after a decade of tentative democracy. The next election has no set date, but tensions are set to rise ahead of the anticipated ballot as many forces oppose the junta. Voting will only take place in about half the country, and dozens of opposition groups are banned. As both sides push to increase their control of territory, one analyst told Reuters, quote, "There is a very real danger these elections could turn into a bloodbath if revolutionary forces decide to attack polling stations, election officials, and party candidates." Opponents of the military government have urged other countries not to recognize the outcome, saying it will be held against the will of the people. A state-run outlet said extending the state of emergency was needed for, quote, stability and peace, in order to hold what they call a, quote, free and fair election. Critics have derided the election as a sham by the junta to keep themselves in power through proxies.
We're going to take a short commercial break. When we return, we'll have the latest on the flooding in Queensland, Australia. This is World News Tonight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to World News Tonight. To Australia now. A life-threatening flood disaster continues to unfold in far north Queensland. There have now been more than 50 people rescued from floodwaters in towns almost 300 kilometers apart. Hundreds of people remain trapped in homes under siege from floodwaters.
A torrent of water gushes through an Ingham fuel station. rising by the hour and inundating homes as the worst fear for this flood emergency was unfolding.
No. There's someone in it.
Residents yell instructions at the driver being swept away.
Jump out, mate! Jump out! The window! Jump!
Those in their homes helpless. This man is one of the lucky ones. Ingham is one of the biggest concerns. The Herbert River is set to swell to record levels not seen since 1967. Power has been cut to the town due to a submerged substation, and there are thousands more across the flood zone who will spend tonight in the dark. There are bolstered Ergon energy teams to deal with the emergency, but one crew working to repair fallen power lines in Townsville became victims themselves. But for now, residents are braced for more to come.
Now, a video released by Khartoum state media office showed that bodies were seen wrapped in white and black bags placed on the ground. Now, this is in the aftermath of a strike. Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces on a market in the city of Omdurman, which killed at least 54 people. The video also showed that people injured in the same attack were receiving treatment in the nearby hospital. The Sudan Health Ministry said in a statement at least 54 people were killed and 158 wounded on late Saturday's attacks in a strike by Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces. The RSF, in a statement, meanwhile, denied targeting the market and instead accused the Sudanese army of launching attacks targeting civilians. Now, the French army has handed over its last base in Chad in a military ceremony in the capital N'Djamena, marking the end of French military presence in that country. Following us that story tonight from France is Derana, World News special correspondent in France, Chaitanya Dharmaratna, who joins me now with the latest. Chaitanya?
Yes, Mahesh. French troops lowered their flag at a base in Chad, marking the end of France's nearly 70-year military presence in the Central African nation. The last French soldiers departed from the N'Djamena military base this week, ahead of the January 31st deadline set by Chadian President Mohamed Idriss Déby. Speaking at a ceremony on Friday, Déby hailed the departure as a new dawn of Chad. France's military involvement in Chad began in 1960 following the country's independence, initially focused on training the newly formed Chadian military. The withdrawal is a part of a broader reduction in France's military presence across West Africa, with French forces also ordered to leave the Burkina Faso and Mali following coups in those nations. Along with Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, Chad has expressed interest in strengthening ties with Russia, signing military deals and inviting Russian troops to train their armed forces. Back to you, Mahesh.
A historic event indeed. Well, Chaitanya Dharmaratna following that story for us tonight from Paris in France. Thank you. Well, if you were thinking that 2025 is going to be the year of many plane crashes, well, you might not be wrong. Residents in northeast Philadelphia on Saturday stood in disbelief at the devastation that they witnessed in their neighborhood after a small medical plane crashed the previous night near a shopping center. At least 70 people, everyone on board and a person on the ground were killed, and at least 19 others were injured as well. Investigators are seeking answers on why the medical transport plane plunged out of the sky less than a minute after it took off with a pediatric patient and her mother. It was the second aviation tragedy to rattle the country this past week after nearly 70 people were killed in a mid-air collision between an American Airlines flight and an Army helicopter over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, another United Airlines passenger plane's wing caught fire upon takeoff. Houston seems to be having a problem.
Harrowing moments in Houston when a United Airlines flight caught fire just before takeoff. Please get us out of here. This video, a passenger shot showing flames coming out of the aircraft's wing. The New York-bound passengers appearing frantic as flight attendants urged calm.
Please remain seated until further.
First responders racing to the scene. More than 100 passengers and 5 crew members were on board, United Airlines says. Passengers left waiting on the runway with the plane before officials say they were bused back to the terminal. The FAA says they will investigate. Tonight, those United Airlines passengers finally in the air after an early morning takeoff scare.
We're going to take a short commercial break. When we return, we'll have the latest on the flooding in Queensland, Australia. This is World News Tonight. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to World News Tonight. Now, Samsung Electronics chairman J.Y. Lee was found not guilty of accounting fraud and stock manipulation by a Seoul appeals court today in a case about a 2015 merger that prosecutors said was designed to cement his control of the tech giant. The case has highlighted long-running legal risks for Lee, who faces growing questions about his ability to lead Samsung Electronics, the world's top memory chip and smartphone maker, grappling with growing competition and lackluster stock prices. It was not immediately clear whether the prosecution would decide to appeal the decision at the Supreme Court on a later date. Well, I don't personally believe this fact, but according to popular belief, correcting what was widely seen as an historic wrong, Beyoncé won Best Album at the 67th Grammy Awards in Los Angeles. Now, the star was recognized for her 8th album, Cowboy Carter, which celebrates and contextualizes the black roots of country music. She had previously been passed over for the ceremony's main prize on 4 separate occasions. Now, here's the wrap-up, the snubs and the grabs from the 67th Grammys.
From Beyoncé's big night to epic performances from The Weeknd to Charli XCX, here's everything that went down at the 2025 Grammys. Stars like Taylor Swift, Chappell Roan, Sabrina Carpenter, and more graced the red carpet for music's biggest night. Host Trevor Noah kicked off the night addressing the devastating wildfires that raged through Los Angeles in January and noting that the telecast would be raising funds for MusiCares fire relief, supporting the work of MusiCares as well as other charities. In addition, the Grammys gave ad space throughout the night to local businesses. Noah also noted that musical act Dawes were among those who lost everything in the fires, which segued into the band taking the stage for the opening performance of the night alongside John Legend, Sheryl Crow, Brad Paisley, Brittany Howard, and St. Vincent. Sabrina Carpenter delivered one of the early performances of the night, giving a cheeky performance of her hits Espresso and Please Please Please. Sabrina also earned one of the early wins of the night for Best Pop Vocal Album, in addition to Doechii for Best Rap Album. The rapper also capped off her win with a show-stopping performance of her hit Catfish and Denial is a River. A standout moment was when Taylor Swift presented the award for Best Country Album to Beyoncé for Cowboy Carter.
And the Grammy goes to Cowboy Carter.
Other notable performances included Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, Charli XCX, Chappell Roan, Shakira, and a Quincy Jones tribute performance that included Stevie Wonder, Lainey Wilson, and more, where Cynthia Erivo gave a captivating rendition of Fly Me to the Moon, and Janelle Monáe gave a thriller performance.
I'm pretty sure a lot of Swifties must be crying. I think there are like around 4 or 5 Swifties in the control room right now sobbing as well. I think my producer is also a Swiftie. Aren't you, Vinod? Apparently he is. Anyway, on a programming note, make sure you tune on to Under Derana 24 on Sunday night. That's Sunday the 9th of February 2025 at 9:35 p.m. to watch the whole show. The whole of Grammys right here on Under Derana 24. Well, that's a wrap from all of us at World News Tonight. Up next is Anuradha Vikramasinghe standing by for the nightly business report. I'm Mahesh Johnny. We're going to leave you with the best red carpet looks from the 67th Grammys. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night.